Hello and welcome to another TLDR EU video. Tax havens. When you think of them, what countries or places come to mind? The Cayman Islands? Luxembourg? Maybe even Ireland? One country that almost certainly came to mind would have been Switzerland. Switzerland has, whether they like it or not, appropriated the label of Europe's tax haven. The question being whether that label is justified. US President Joe Biden seems to think so, but the Swiss people are less convinced. So in this video we'll explain tax havens, take a look at just why tax havens have suddenly come back to the spotlight, and whether Switzerland really is one. Before we start though, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel to help us get closer to 200,000 subscribers, and to make sure you never miss any new content. Thank you for your support. The pandemic has cost society, well, a lot. Livelihoods, lives and economies have all been hit extremely badly. It's because of that last point, economies, that the issue of tax havens has recently emerged. One way or another, countries will have had to pay for the vast amounts of money they've had to borrow or spend, be it to purchase vaccines and PPE or to furlough employees. And what's one of the easiest ways to raise money for countries? Well, tax. The issue being that taxing someone or something doesn't work as intended if they can just hide all their money away in a tax haven. As we've covered on the US channel, US President Joe Biden is spending hard to kickstart a recovery. In his address to Congress, Biden highlighted that a lot of companies also evade taxes through tax havens in Switzerland and Bermuda and the Cayman Islands. A remark that Switzerland immediately took offence to. A spokesperson for the Swiss Finance Department hit back, stating that Switzerland considers this highlighting of Switzerland as a tax haven by the USA as inappropriate and completely out of date. Switzerland meets all international standards in tax matters. The OECD has confirmed this in writing to Switzerland in 2020. We reported this to the US Treasury last week, as this is not the first time the new administration has made these statements. Which begs the question, is Switzerland a tax haven anymore? Before we dive into that, let's establish exactly what it means to be a tax haven. Well, I think we all understand that they're places where you can put your money to hide from taxes, but it's a little bit more complex than that. At its core, true tax havens tend to have two core elements: secrecy and opportunity. On the secrecy front, many jurisdictions classed as tax havens make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, who actually owns a given company, for instance, where anyone and everyone can look up who runs a company on Companies House. On the opportunity front, said jurisdictions will have extremely favourable tax conditions. Corporation and income tax may even be as low as 0%. According to Deloitte, 10 jurisdictions charge no corporation tax at the national level, including the likes of the Bahamas, Bahrain and the British Virgin Islands. Others include the Cayman Islands and the Isle of Man. When you put both secrecy and opportunity together, what you get is a low tax bill while having made it nigh impossible for the jurisdiction you actually earned the money in to find out. So let's see if Switzerland meets the secrecy and opportunity criteria. On the opportunity criteria, again according to Deloitte, the national rate of corporation taxation in Switzerland is 8.5%. But that's not the end of the story, as additional taxes are levied by the individual cantons in Switzerland. Combining the national or federal level and the canton level of tax, you get an effective tax burden of somewhere in the region of 12 and 22%, with the majority between 12 and 14%, which, to be fair, is significantly lower than other European jurisdictions. France levies a 26.5% tax on companies with a turnover of less than €250 million and 27.5% on companies above that. Germany charges 15% nationally, but when taken into account municipal taxation and a solidarity surcharge, becomes an effective rate of between 30 and 33%. Ireland, however, levies a 12.5% tax on trading income, much closer to the Swiss level. Bulgaria levies a 10% tax and Hungary charges just 9%. The secrecy front is where it gets extremely interesting. The Tax Justice Network, an advocacy group focusing on, well, tax justice, regularly compiles a financial secrecy index. In their own words, the index ranks each country based on how intensely the country's legal and financial system allows wealthy individuals and criminals to hide and launder money extracted from around the world. While the Cayman Islands grabbed the top spot when it comes to enabling financial secrecy, it is the United States that comes immediately second, ahead of Switzerland in third. The OECD, which publishes a list of uncooperative tax havens, has indeed assessed Switzerland as being largely compliant when it comes to cracking down on tax avoidance and evasion. Switzerland is signed up to the Exchange of Information on Request, or EOIR, initiative. As the name suggests, allowing for countries to exchange information on who has paid what tax and where. The Tax Justice Network compiled another index, the Corporate Tax Havens Index, which apportions A. how much scope for corporate tax abuse the jurisdiction's tax and financial systems allows, and B. how much of the financial activity conducted by the multinational corporations around the world is hosted by the jurisdiction. And then, finally, allocates each jurisdiction responsibility for a given percentage of the world's corporate tax abuse risks. On the first element, scope for abuse, Switzerland scores quite highly at 89. Few jurisdictions score much higher than that. On the second element, what the network term global scale weight, Switzerland scores just 3.4%. The Netherlands, for instance, score 11%, with the UK scoring 7.3%. When both aspects are combined to give a weighted responsibility figure, however, Switzerland is ranked 5th in the world, with 5.1% of the world's corporate tax abuse risks originating in Swiss territory. So, is Switzerland a tax haven? Well, ish. While it's clear that Switzerland has favourable conditions when it comes to taxation, it has made significant progress in cracking down on tax avoidance and evasion schemes, so much so that in 2019, Switzerland, along with Serbia, Mauritius, Costa Rica and Albania, were all found to be in full compliance with all commitments on tax cooperation by the European Council. The EU's list of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes now currently stands at just 12 jurisdictions long, and while it includes the likes of Guam, Panama and the US Virgin Islands, all somewhat ironically part of the United States, critically, Switzerland is not on that list anymore. But what do you think? Was Biden's comments just a cheap shot, irking back to a bygone era? Is Switzerland no longer a tax haven? Or will it forever be tainted with that label? As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever we post. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos just like this one possible. And if you want to see your name listed at the end of the videos just like these people, then be sure to back us on Patreon. There's a link in the description.